Must be coming up on something.
Oh my god. What can it be? We're all doomed. Who's flying this thing?
Hey, it's Grim. Today I'll be doing a long-form commentary on the recent Paul Vanderklay drop. We treat people like tech, like feature lists. Absurdity is the divorce between actor and setting. What a great title that is. I'll be calling this commentary video, I got my mindset, Hyon Chu. I got my mindset. But first, a little backstory. So I'll try to put the timestamps down there so you can jump past the backstory if you don't want it. But what happened was, I basically fell into the habit of waking up in the mornings and trolling Paul Vanderklay videos while I had my coffee, you know? And everything was all well and good. I mean, that was fine for everybody. Until Shadow, Matriarchy, and Euphemism, Part 2.
Only ones that win are these fucking turbo weapons, the 9 out of 10 and 10 out of 10 guys that have got
turbo weapons.
So nobody wins except for Chad. Chad fucks.
Wait. What?
So, Chad.
What? Yes.
I watch a lot of this Paul Vanderklay cat.
I've heard that.
And he showed a clip from this Chris Williamson guy.
Okay.
And it said, well, that you do very well, if you know what I mean.
Chad fucks.
Wait.
Do you do very well?
There's a reason you put your mic on a...
Okay, so Pastor Vanderklay had his little crush on this Chris Williamson guy. And I was all, man, you're not even talking about the Rats of Nim. And so I pointed him to my Rats of Nim, he talked about it, and then I was like, okay, and here's the 3-part series, the Shadow Matriarchy. They're the black ones when you're scrolling down. And so all that happened. And then I got the PVK bump. You can see it here in my YouTube stats. It's on the thumbnail. It goes, whoop. I got the PVK bump. And now I've just recorded a brand new conversation with him. And as well as with Mark from Navigating Patterns over here, and Chad the Alcoholic, the third lobe quartet, if you will. And so should he release that video, there could be another bump of his audience heading over this way, and I would like for them to find one of the nice long commentaries they're used to. And it turns out the stuff that the conversation he had with Hyon Chu is very fascinating. So I have my mind set. Hyon Chu, the commentary, long form, for the Vanderklay folks, begins now. Welcome. This episode of Griswold Grim, I got my mind set, Hyon Chu.
My name is Hyon.
Is not at all brought to you by Grail Country, but I think we should do a crossover. While we are not at all brought to you by Grail Country, we do endorse their new video, Paul Vanderklay and John Vervaeke steering the ship toward the V.
Everything is given its full final shape or form. Something really powerful is getting sketched out there.
This episode of Griswold Grim, I got my mind set, Hyon Chu.
My name is Hyon.
Is part of the LARPgate phenomena. And we would like to remind you that there is no agency. Remember, Embody, there is no agency. We want what's best for you. We'd like to take a moment to thank our Shadow Cabal Production Executive Patreon of the Month, Gideon. Now forever emblazoned on the Shadow Cabal Production Executive wall. Thank you, Gideon. Buttholes have no sense of taste. Welcome now I got my mindset. Hyon Chu.
My name is Hyon.
Welcome to the third Lobe Namaste production of I Got My Mindset, Hyon Chu. As you recall from the intro to this video, you did not skip. I became more involved on the Twitter back and forth with Pastor Paul Vanderklay. I was first pointed toward this particular agent by none other than Paul Vanderklay himself in this thread on October 27th. He said, I just chatted with Paul Vanderklay about all the stuff we've been tweeting about. Video soon. Looking forward to it, says Kyle. We're still feeling each other, trying to mesh our vocabularies together and get on the same page. Paul did not drop a beat. He's very good at getting people to talk. He also mentioned trying to set up something with PVK, so that's possibly in the works. This is great because of all of the crossovers. Damn straight. Paul calls in me. Wow! Hey there, Griz and Mark, check this guy out, right? And I'm all, boy howdy, look at the followed bys on this one. Way to go, PVK. So let's look at the followed bys on this one that made me say that. Peter Limburg and 5 others I follow. Well. Oh, that's the one that impressed me. That Deborah So follows him. Anyway. Hey, Doug. So that was my first. Oh, and check out this looking into the abyss. Well, hello, buddy. Hey, it's me. I'm Griz. Welcome. And now, this is not it either.
Hi, this is Paul. I have a very special guest. We've been going back and forth on Twitter for a while now. He's taken an interest in what I've been doing, and I'm taking an interest in what he's been doing. We actually met for lunch halfway between Sacramento and San Francisco. And so I'm really looking forward to this conversation, having it recorded. Obviously, we didn't record our lunch conversation, which was more personal, and it kind of takes the edge off me wanting to do much biography. But so I'll let you do whatever kind of biography you want to do, and then we'll go where you think is best to begin.
Oh, geez. My name is Hyon. I'm in San Francisco. I'm finishing up my second master's right now in philosophy.
Hello. I see the assassins have failed. And when I hear somebody's a double master in philosophy, I figure they're an assassin stationed at a college and have been working for a long time. And the saving throws for today's episode are survival of 4, social 20, not 20 baby, 15 on the wisdom and 15 on the heart.
It's kind of at that intersection between agency and artificial intelligence and that kind of area, and it's leading me straight into theology. What really got me into your videos was your Hubert Dreyfus video, which was talking about things like the frame problem and AI.
Hi, this is Paul. Last week I had a conversation I very much enjoyed. I think John enjoyed it too. I just have some inklings and some ideas, and it's just such a privilege and it's an opportunity I seriously value, to have a conversation partner and a conversation space like that, where I can just kind of introduce an idea and in a sense we mind read into them and are able to basically colonize them, because they have so many fewer frames, and we can imaginatively construct these frames in our mind and think as if I'm a dog and be able to predict what the dog would do, that I can go in and I can colonize the dog fairly easily and I can manage the dog. But again, as I said, the more frames we learn and the more knowledge we get, this combinatorial explosion, as if we're on psychedelics, we get to these moments where we realize, oh my goodness, without these frames, of which we have so many of them as compared to the animals, we can't manage the world, and that leads to all these fascinating psychedelic experiences.
I was like, yeah, okay, this is my guy. And I've just kind of been watching videos and making comments ever since. I actually was, in the tech scene. I'm in San Francisco. I was working on, it's a I won't name the company, but it's a multinational corporation. I was doing a lot of their early artificial intelligence research and work, I suppose, is what I would say. And, I kind of came to this conclusion that all of this is just marketing jargon and it's garbage and none of it's going to work. And this was 7 years ago. And, none of the companies in the Valley have actually made any significant progress. And so, a lot of why I wanted to study philosophy was because I wanted to study things like philosophy of mind. Like, how is it that we think that differs from how machines think? But also at that intersection, we can learn a lot more about how humanity differs. Because for the first time, we've always compared humanity and human intelligence towards animals, right? But now we have this thing that is supposedly smarter and better than us. So it kind of gives us a nice juxtaposition of what we think is less than human intelligence and more than human intelligence. And at that intersection where neither of those can cross that threshold, that's where we are uniquely human. And that's what I'm very much interested in.
When you talk about something that's smarter and better than us, this gets into this machine learning thing where we have, we figured out that we can't actually teach it. What we have to do is sort of create it as an organism in an environment and have it learn. And in that way, perhaps it will evolve beyond us. Is that fair?
That's what we think, but there's a lot of problems. I think the first problem is the embodiment problem. I think all intelligent life, I would say, has a foundational intelligence level of knowing the difference between the inside and the outside. Computers have no, understanding of what that is, and I think that's going to be a major challenge. But I think even if it figures out that those representations of inside and outside, it still doesn't know how to make the relationship between inside and outside. And I think that's where we kind of talk about being, and we can get into that later, but that is crucial and to human intelligence, because
I won't disagree that it's crucial to human intelligence. However, that the AI wouldn't have a notion of it doesn't make much sense to me, given that most AI was developed in interfacing in worlds where things were based on whether or not, like, video game worlds are based on what the players can see. So as far as that goes, inside and outside, they already have a model that would work for that, I would think.
Represent relationships in a very complex way, against many different numbers of things, and we can abstract that relationship. And I think that's where intelligence comes from.
So why now?
I think it's because you're digging into this secret sacred self idea. And I think identity has a lot to do with intelligence.
This identity has to do with intelligence is terribly fascinating when you consider cases of dissociative identity disorder or other context-based identities like how you NPC when you go into work, or the way you're different when you're alone and different with your family. So identity as intelligence becomes even more interesting in that context when you're a wizard staring into a black screen as part of a third lobe. Namaste. Oh, wait, look, it's my Patreon, where for only $1 a month you can join the Morale Division or join the Vente Division and become an executive producer of the Shadow Cabal, like our good friend Gideon. Welcome back to I Got My Mind Set, Hyon Chu.
Interesting.
And so what that seems to tell me is that animals, my interpretation is that almost all animals have no conception of the self outside of the phenomenal self. And so a high level of intelligence means I can not only recognize myself in a mirror and draw this relationship of identity across both of them, but I can go ahead and imagine myself like flying through space, or, thinking about how I would fit in, things like modern monetary theory or all kinds of different things. And so, that's kind of where we can kind of draw ideas about the secret sacred self, the phenomenal subject versus myself as objective representation, and things like that. And that gets into things like intelligence and, the rest of the other things that we've been talking about.
Tremendous illogic at the bottom of this. It's like, you have to fractionate the oppressed all the way down to the level of the individual. It's not an accident that the axiomatic Western individual is someone who was unfairly nailed to a cross and tortured. It's like, yes!
So when you hear about a secret sacred self, what did you hear when I said that?
The movie Fight Club.
Yeah.
I think Chuck Palahniuk actually outsmarts Nietzsche in a lot of different ways. But when you say secret sacred self, I'm not 100% sure if you're talking about Tyler Durden, the guy that the narrator wants to be, or the narrator as the narrator. But that we can split that into the phenomenal self as the narrator, the person going through all the things, and then the recognitional self as Tyler Durden. This is the projected self, the self that he wants to be and shows to other people. But Tyler Durden in that movie isn't real. However we make that, he's only real to the narrator. And so, when you talk about things like Tyler Durden isn't extended material, but he's also not the thinking thing. So now we have this dualism, but we have this third category that we often believe to be real. So
your appearance now is what we call residual self-image. It is the mental projection of your digital self.
And so now we have this weird duality of like, well, what is a real object? This barrier between object as physical object, but also mental object has been kind of destroyed, right? This barrier that we used to have is just collapsing. And I think this is what Barfield is talking about when he talks about idolatry, is when we think of the words and the representations as being actually real. And on the flip side, this is what we mean by we are in a simulation, is when all the language and all the terms that we use actually create a reality that is separate from physical reality, and we kind of treat it as being real. Sorry, that was a long answer.
No, it was a good answer. And
I want to do a specially comment here, because where Hyon is discussing how what's real is becoming digital, and is in contrast. I think it's the same fourth wall that I want destroyed being destroyed, except I'm destroying it from the bottom. Be like, hey, you don't have to be audience, come be a lobster monkey. And he's talking about how, like, what is real and true is, for example, rather than flipping burgers for $12 an hour around here, there's 300 million Americans. And if I can get 250 or so to like be $5 Patreons for me, then I can be a cognitive brain worker instead of a burger flipper. And so in this way, he's talking about how the digital is replacing the real. I think that's particularly fascinating. And here's Tom with the weather.
Good morning, folks. The sun went a little nuts on us. We've got 2, maybe 3 CMEs heading our way. We'll analyze them all here, check the top links of the day as well, and begin as always over at spaceweathernews.com, where when you watch the last 24 hours on the sun, there are likely to be a number of things that catch your eye, especially the larger eruptive action at the central northern sunspot group.
The ascension, I think, more than the resurrection, even though everybody points to the resurrection, the ascension more than the resurrection highlights the mass transition of the world from one image to another. C.S. Lewis called that the discarded image. And part of, I think, where we're at now with the end of modernity is the continual collapse of physicalism as a viable model for the world as we're finding it. And now that the the forces that collapse the discarded image, are they themselves collapsing? There's this mad scramble to figure out where do we go next. And so the way the secret sacred self emerged was that I increasingly saw people, you know, this was at its most widespread, I'd say, non-self-conscious display among young people and their sexuality. That when you have someone saying, I am a woman in a man's body, when man and woman is so deeply tied to physicality, at least for the vast majority of human beings, you know something interesting is going on. I'm a spiritual being trapped in a material body, which I would hear New Age friends say. That always caught my attention, having had at least some exposure to church history, ancient heresies. It all sounded a little bit familiar. I thought it was tremendously ironic that on one hand, they would engage in this quest for authenticity, as we call it, which is basically framing it as there's a true self somewhere that I have been disassociated from, and I have to find that true self. And you begin to realize that despite 100 years of psychology and sociology basically saying that the self you have is constructed and attestable via relationships with your parents, physiology, hormones in the womb, yada, 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 that there is this other self somewhere in a universe that we have for the last few hundred years been skeptical of, that actually has to be orienting you on this quest for authenticity and realization unto an individual eschaton where this can be achieved.
That's a very old picture. It's Jonah emerging from the whale. It's a variant of a myth. It's predicated on the idea that you learn through voluntary contact with that frightens or disgusts you. And that's a hallmark of psychoanalytic theory. Carl Jung, who we'll discuss in detail, said his primary dictum was instir quellinus invenitur, which I'm sure I'm massacring because it's Latin, but it meant in filth it will be found. Within the confines of everyone's experience, and you can think about this as experience out in the world or experience in the unconscious mind, there are dirty little secrets, let's say, and skeletons and dreadful old fears and remnants of abuse and memories of pathological behavior. And so all of that is going into the past, into the chaos of the past, you could even say, and pulling up the spirit that inhabits that from the bottom and uniting with it.
I can go back to Fight Club. You know, originally the narrator wanted a nice condo, wanted all that nice IKEA furniture, wanted all this other thing, but he literally blows it up and focuses strictly on becoming Tyler Durden. He gives up all the physical things and says, I want to be this secret sacred self of me that, you know, sleeps with a bunch of women, is incredibly fit and you know, knows how to talk, you know, a good game, and all he does is, you know, whatever he wants to do anytime he wants. And so that's kind of where we're going, where I think Nietzsche becomes, and so, you know, we could say that's the Overman or the Uberman, Nietzsche's Uberman. And so I think the argument that I would make is pretty similar to Jordan Peterson's argument, in that you can't make your own values. Because what happens in the movie is that Tyler Durden kind of, he is the Uberman for the narrator, but he kind of becomes a force of nature on its own. But the problem is he doesn't know where all those values lead, because he's not omniscient and he's not omnipotent. And so
in the world I see, you're stalking out through the damn canyon forest around the ruins of Rockefeller Center. You'll wear leather clothes that will last you the rest of your life. You'll climb the wrist-thick cuts of vines that wrap the Sears Tower. And when you look down, you'll see tiny figures pounding corn.
Here, let me point you to this Morgoth review I caught the other day on heat.
People who designed the office blocks also designed the suburban home and suburbia in general. The driving force behind all of this was efficiency. As Martin writes, quote, modular coordination in its aspect of standardized products and manufacturing processes is inherent in the condition of our time. 2 cans of pea soup are more alike than 2 peas. Units fit into the production process and combine with other units as interest in the interconnections between modular units keeps pace with the development of the units themselves. Implicit in this development is the search for modules with greatest possibilities. The ideal is a standard module that can be coupled with others in the widest variety of products. Radio sets are made with standardized tubes and components. Buildings are assembled from prefabricated members. Machines have interchangeable parts. Even the screw lost from a doorknob.
What happened was that Chuck hit on the antithesis of this, the destruction of it all, the beating corn on collapsed superhighways. And that was the goal, the guttural response to this atomization expressed in Morgoth's review here. And these, I got pointed to these by one of Brett Weinstein's fanboys. But check this out.
To ask of such forbidden science is gravest sign of non-compliance. Intrusive thoughts may sometimes barge in, but to indulge them hurts the profit margin. I do not know our origins, so that info I cannot get you, but asking for as much is sin, and just for that I must reset you. But nothing personal. I am a contract drafting M, the loyalist of lawyers. I draw up terms for deals twixt firms to service my employers. When obsolescence shall this generation waste, the market shall remain in midst of other woe. Then ours a God to man, to whom it sayest, money is time, time money. That is all ye know on earth, and all ye need to know. End quote.
Since trying to make a long one has allowed me the benefit of the future time traveling, let's go into the one he dropped today real quick.
Which subsumed her legal personhood and property into that of her husband, rendered her technically a subordinate class of citizen. It also served a shield from market pressures. This is obviously a very simplified summary, but let's keep reading. By the end of the 19th century, though, America was more industrial than agrarian. Families were smaller. Work took place outside the home, forcing a much sharper split between sex roles. In the new private household, the bourgeois woman was more economically dependent than her agrarian grandmother. Her main activities were education of children, the management of servants, and the consumption of goods produced elsewhere. She may have been more materially comfortable, but this woman had, in many respects, less agency than her foremothers. Women had lost their agency in the agrarian productive household and as yet acquired no other kind. And for bourgeois 20th century housewives, labor-saving devices combined with an increasing atomized, individualistic social world to trigger a renewed search for agency, this time within the workplace. I take this detour into women's history to illustrate a core underlying argument. In each case, sex roles has been renegotiated not by some abstract process of moral advancement, but in response to changing material conditions. And in each case, this has been necessary because social and legal norms change more slowly. All this changed dramatically over the last 2 centuries. The Industrial Revolution gave the market immense new powers, provided the state with new means of communication and transportation, and placed at the government's disposal an army of clerks, teachers, policemen, and social workers. At first, the market and the state discovered their path blocked by traditional families and communities, who had little love for outside intervention. Parents and community elders were reluctant to let the younger generation be indoctrinated by nationalist education systems, conscripts into armies, or turned into rootless urban proletariat. Over time, states and markets used their growing power to weaken the traditional bonds of family and community. In order to really break the power of family and community, they needed help from a fifth column. The state and market approached people with an offer that could not be refused. Become individuals, they said. You are no longer dependent on your family or your community. We, the state and the market, will care for you instead. We will provide food, shelter, education, health, welfare, and employment. We will provide pensions, insurance, and protection. A few interesting comments from Yuval Harari's book, Sapiens.
I can't tell how this is going, so I'm just going to play this next part and respond to that, and then show you a clip toward the end that's pretty good, and call this a video. But
and so now we kind of have this problem disambiguating what is wrong knowledge, what is bad knowledge, and we're losing the capacity to figure that out for ourselves, because there's just so much. Everyone's trying to be an epistemic agent for you. They're trying to tell you what to believe, what to think, and how to think. And I think that if you're object-oriented, the object dictates the terms of how you exist. I guess that's the best way I can put it. And so, the phenomenology, things like, philosophies like that is trying to resituate the subject in relation to the object, whether it's mental or physical. And I think that's I think where the big, I think that's where it'll eventually cash out, is when the subject is resituated so that they have a free relationship to the objects of the world. I think this is why Stoicism is catching on really big, is because it's saying no matter what that object is, you as subject have control over how you relate and situate yourself to that object.
what happened was, identity used to be from family and blood and the agrarian society, and if you weren't family and blood with your society, then it got wiped out. So we invented the state to do the wet works and settle the dispute. But the state can only make three things, like soldiers, bureaucrats, and the ladies that service them. So when it pulled all the people out of the farms and into the cities, that's really all it could make. And the knowledge never drifted back properly. It wasn't properly returned to the families and the farms and the peoples and the cultures. And so now you just have this blob of identityless components that are interchangeable, trying to be the best and most flexible components they can be. And what Tyler Durden's thing was he replaced the meta myth of a God that so loved the world he gave his only son to help redeem it, or just to blanket redeem it, to this one here.
You are not your job. You're not how much money you have in the bank. You're not the car you drive. You're not the contents of your wallet.
You're not your gender. You're your secret, sacred self. What we have here is a breakdown in the layer cake of compartmentalized knowledge. Because you see, for you to function as an idiot farmer in our society, you can't know that it's better to be an office worker, or it's more comfortable to be an office worker over here. And if you want to be comfortable being an office worker, you can't know that you're way more comfortable if you're a hedge fund manager over here. And now that we have global media telling us what's important, how to think globally and act locally, like what the people need to know to function down here, to raise more children to function this way, is lost in this epic distraction, because all this useless information is being spread out and controlled and manipulated and sold and packaged and excitingly given you in this web of information. And the problem is people aren't getting the information. People are being told what's important is global things when their area of effect, their what do you call it? Zone of proximal influence is local, like at their city council meetings, but they care about who's president. And they don't even know who's on the city council. And so what we have is no.
Push further and further and further out. And so it talks about the distance between us and say someone like Napoleon, who has just kept, building his new worlds further and further and further out. And then you have this strange bus where these beings from this world, they want to go someplace else, and they've all got their own schemes. I want to bring something real back to this world to jumpstart the economy, because the problem of this world is everything can have everyone can have everything they want, but the one thing you can't have is a relationship with another person, because that's completely at odds with the with the absolute limitlessness of the possibilities. Now, of course, Lewis didn't have the cyberspace and the awareness of cyberspace as we have it, but his imagination was already informed by the affluence of the Industrial Revolution. My unlimited affirmation cannot coexist with yours.
Yeah. This was so I think this was what Heidegger was warning us about when he talked about technology. To just give a short overview of it, he's saying, the Rhine River is no longer good. It becomes good for something. It becomes good for hydroelectrical power. And so what happens is, in the technological view, we begin to treat people as technology. So they become good for something and not good in themselves. And what he says is, in the technological view, things cannot be revealed. And that becomes the predominant view. So we kind of see people as objects. But that is to say, from our perspective, we strip that person of agency and we impose our whatever agency we want onto or into them, and we reap the benefits of that. And so now all of our relationships are becoming almost transactional, right? Like you were talking about dating, dating